It's week 2 of the World Cup season, and I'm coming your way again with some observations about what football is teaching us about reputation, influence, visibility, and power through the World Cup. This is week 2 of the Brand Builders World Cup, and my name is Keni Ribeiro. Let's get into it. Last year, we established that even though we gather every 4 years to watch football, the reality is that we are watching a battle for narrative, power, influence, memory playing out on the field. And this week, we're answering an interesting question: how to build a brand. How to build a brand that people will remember. Because in the end, we are all trying to build brands, aren't we? The thing is, not everybody arrives at this competition on equal footing. Some brands walk onto the stage, onto the pitch already powerful. The crowd is already theirs even before a ball is kicked. The expectation is already set. The story is already written. The journalists are just waiting for the scoreline so that the press publish on their drafts. The thing is, there are other people who also have to earn that power in real time. They arrive unknown, but they leave unforgettable. And understanding the difference between these two parts and what it costs is one of the most important things that the World Cup is teaching us right now. Because there are two ways to build a brand. Let's go and explore both of them. The first one is slow. And that's one of the most powerful things in branding. When you build a brand slowly, consistently, and deliberately over time, you realize that there's weight in that brand. And a perfect example would be Lionel Messi. We already know him. The story and his fame precede him. He's 38 years old, slower than he was 5 years ago. In his second match against Austria, he missed a penalty in the 9th minute. Dragged it wide in front of the entire world. But that didn't take away from his star power, because shortly after that, he scored twice, becoming the leading all-time scorer in World Cup history with 18 goals on his record 6th World Cup appearance. But that's not even the most interesting thing. The most interesting thing for me is how his fandom behaves. Let me take you to what happens in Bangladesh. Bangladesh doesn't have any geographical connection to Argentina. There's no cultural overlap. There's no historical relationship with South American football. But every time Argentina plays, cities in Bangladesh literally shut down. There are watch parties in the streets. People who have never been to Argentina, who will never be to Argentina, who have no logical reason to care about Argentina, cheer up in their thousands to cheer for one man, Lionel Messi. And that is not by accident. That is what 2 decades of consistent excellence in football looks like. He has built a brand so strong, so deep, that it crosses every boundary that can logically contain it. I'm talking culture, I'm talking geography, I'm talking language. None of those matter so long as Lionel Messi kicks a ball. You can see that love literally spill out, and that's only because he has built that brand deliberately, consistently over time. So much so that even in moments when he's not perfect, like when he misses a penalty, he doesn't lose love, because people already know what the substance is. And there's a brand lesson here. When you build a brand that is not transactional, that doesn't depend on every performance being perfect, it has moved into something that's more durable. The Algerian coach said this after the hat-trick match in the opening game. He said, class is permanent. And I think that's something we can all agree on, whether we're in branding or whether we're in football. And it's particularly true about someone as legendary as Lionel Messi. Then we can come to another country that is doing the same thing of building a brand slowly and intentionally. And that is Morocco. They are doing this institutionally. So after Qatar 2022, when they became the first African nation to reach a World Cup semi-final, they made a certain decision. They didn't treat it as a miracle, as a flash in the pan. They treated it as a foundation. They kept the same coach, qualified for all the 8 matches, arrived at this tournament ranked 8th in the world. And they drew with Brazil, then they beat Scotland, and then they scored in the first 2 minutes in the World Cup match. They now became no longer the underdog. After a certain point, Morocco is no longer an underdog story after this deliberate preparation. They have transitioned from surprise package to a genuine contender. And the only reason that they did that was by recognizing that they couldn't stay as an underdog, because you can't stay as an underdog forever. It's emotionally compelling and people love it, but you can't build sustained power on that. And I think Morocco recognized that. And so they have become a force to contend with by being consistent and working at what they are doing. So Qatar is no longer their peak, it is now their proof of concept. And they have spent every day since making sure that the entire world knows that they are a force to be reckoned with. Now let's go to the other way of building a brand, which is faster, but it is just as real. The 40-year-old goalkeeper from Cape Verde arrived for his country's first ever World Cup match. And before the kickoff, he had about 50,000 Instagram followers. He made 7 saves with Spain's 27 shots and held the European champions to a 0-0 draw. By the time 24 hours had passed, his following had grown to nearly 14 million overnight. There's a detail worth adding here. This didn't happen by chance. It happened because a Brazilian YouTube broadcaster who had 31 million subscribers watched his performance during the match and told his audience, "We're not going to ask for subscribers today, we're going to ask for followers for him." And the internet responded. There's an interesting detail here. The goalkeeper's performance was real, his talent was real, but the scale of what happened required 2 things. It required him to perform, and it required the platform to give him reach. You still need to do the thing, but what amplifies you and why determines how far you travel. And that is applicable with even us. When you make a tweet and someone really famous retweets it, it boosts the kind of reach you have for your content. If you have a product and someone really influential purchases it and talks about it, that also expands your reach. So it's the same thing that happened here, because his talent didn't suddenly improve, it didn't change, his ability didn't change. The only thing that changed was the stage. He had the same talent before the match, and the same talent he had during the match, same talent after the match. The only thing is that the World Cup gave him distribution and the Brazilian YouTuber gave him reach. That's a visibility argument, and that applies whether you're a footballer in Portugal's 2nd division or a content creator trying to build an audience. The talent is there, the competence is there, but when the moment finds it, poof, it's like magic. So because I am Ghanaian, I do have to talk about the Ghanaian stories that align with these 2 ways of building a brand. Caleb Yerinchi, a 20-year-old born in Bechem, product of the Right to Dream Academy, who now plays in the Danish Super League. And then Brandon Thomas Asante, who was born in England to a Ghanaian father and a Jamaican mother, grew up in English football and described representing Ghana at the World Cup as an answered prayer. 2 completely different journeys, 1 shot, 1 goal, 1 assist in the 95th minute against Panama. Caleb Yerinchi became one of the youngest players to score on the World Cup stage. And in that moment, 1 tap-in, 1 low cross, 2 young men on the biggest stage their football has ever given them. They announced themselves to a global audience simultaneously. And I can imagine that there are scouts all over the world who are keeping their eye on these 2 young men to see where the journey would go. But there's a question behind this beautiful story of Caleb and Thomas Asante, which is, who gets to carry a nation's identity? What qualifies someone to represent a collective brand? Caleb grew up in Ghana. Brandon grew up in England and chose Ghana. Both of them ran towards this jersey when the moment came. And then 4 days later, Ghana walked onto a pitch in Boston against England. Something happened there that was a bit complicated, but of course, because we're dealing with brand visibility and reputation, we will talk about it. Thomas Partey walked onto the pitch with the Ghanaian team that night. Now, before I talk about the branding observation that I want to make, I want to say something clearly. Thomas is facing 7 counts of rape and 1 count of sexual assault, charges that he denies. These are serious allegations made by real people, but what happens in a courtroom is not what I'm here to discuss. What I want to discuss is what happened outside that courtroom, on a football pitch in front of the entire world. The moment Partey walked onto the pitch in Boston, the crowd booed loudly. One English player reportedly did not shake his hand before the kickoff, not as an official statement or on behalf of any institution, but as a personal, visible, public decision. And Ghana's brand, the collective identity of a nation, absorbed all of that before a single ball was kicked. The same way that I spoke about what happened in South Africa, there's something here in terms of reputation that may have taken a hit for Ghana, like it or not. This is the thing about reputation that branding textbooks sometimes miss. You don't always get to choose what you carry onto the pitch. Sometimes your brand inherits the weight of decisions that were made by individuals associated with it. The Ghanaian football team made no decision that brought them to this point, but the Ghanaian brand, the nation and the collective identity carry that weight of the booing, of the dismissal into that match regardless. But something interesting happened in that same match. Ghana held England 0-0. As my people in Ghana like to say, we showed the British the door a second time. England had 19 attempts, Ghana had 2, and the scoreline stayed level. Ghana sat deep, defended with discipline. People like to call it haram ball, and then earned their 1 point against one of the most watched teams in the tournament. They arrived carrying this institutional weight that most people never have to deal with, but they performed anyway. I'm not telling you that erases anything. It doesn't. The allegations are what they are. The reputation question remains open. But here's what I want you to take from it. Brand resilience is not the absence of difficulty. It's the ability to show up with dignity, with discipline, with purpose, even when the circumstances make showing up harder than it should be. Ghana showed up. So, two ways to build a brand. Slowly, the way Messi has, the way Morocco has, through consistent, intentional behavior over years until the world's expectation of you precedes your arrival. Until your failures become part of the story rather than against it. Until people in countries that have nothing to do with you, have no reason to care about you, are filling up the streets to watch you play. Or suddenly, the way the goalkeeper from Cape Verde did, the way Caleb and Brandon did, through a defining performance on the right stage at the right moment. And in a night that changes everything. Before you know it, you've announced yourself to the world. Both of these ways to build a brand are real. Both of them are valid. But here's the distinction that matters. A brand that is built slowly survives when the moment passes. This is not dependent on the moment. It existed before the moment and it will exist after the moment. The brand that is born in the moment needs to make a decision. Do you use the visibility that moment gave you to build something durable, or do you let the moment become the entire story? This World Cup will be over in a few weeks. The stage will close, the spotlight will move, people will move back to business as usual. But what you have built while the spotlight is on you, that is what will remain. The World Cup will be over in a few weeks, the stage will close, the spotlight will move, people will move on to business as usual. But what you built while the spotlight was on you, that is what will remain. My name is Keni Ribeiro, and this has been the Brand Builders World Cup, where we explore what football teaches you about visibility, influence, reputation, and power. We're 2 weeks in. I'm excited about what Ghana has done so far, and I'm looking forward to seeing us go even further. The tournament continues to give us so many stories, so many nuggets. I'll be back again next week with another set of observations from another set of matches. I'll see you then. Stay tuned. Bye.